Community Highlights. Another local exclusive from Southeastern Michigan's news and information station, MonroeCountyRadio.com.
Welcome to Bobbing Around Monroe with host Bobb Vergiels. Bobbing Around Monroe is a public affairs feature of Monroe County Radio and is brought to you by Jones for Men in the heart of downtown Monroe and Infinity Spa and Salon, located at 6000 North Monroe Street at the corner of Netto Road. Now, here's Bobb Vergiels.
Hi, and welcome to Bobbing Around Monroe. Our weekly show is a lively look at the lives and times of people in Monroe County. I'm your host, Bobb Vergiels, and Bobbing Around Monroe is brought to you by Jones for Men in downtown Monroe. And we're very happy today to be joined by someone who, earlier in my career as a newspaper reporter, I couldn't even tell you how many inches of type I've written about this guy. He retired in 2005 as a major with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. Jim Heisler. Jim, great to see you again.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for having me.
And you look great. Looks like you could put the brown on and go back to work.
It'd be tight around the waist, but I could still put the brown on.
How long were you with the Sheriff's Department?
33 and a half years.
And started as a deputy?
No, I started...
In the jail?
When I came back from Vietnam, the Sheriff's Department was looking for helicopter pilots. And at that time, I went over there because they were going to get a couple of Hueys from the government. And so I was hired on originally for that purpose, and I started out working undercover under Bob Teagues for about 3 or 4 months before I was sent to the academy. In between that, I was brought into the jail and worked down at intake. Mm-hmm. Booking prisoners.
Yeah, a lot of people started down there.
Yeah, that was in October of 71 is when I started, and I went to the academy in January of 72.
What was it about police work that you liked? You did it for 33 years, so had to be something you liked.
I enjoyed, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot or a police officer, so I ended up doing both, and yeah. I enjoyed working in Monroe County because I have a lot of family in Monroe County, a lot of friends in Monroe County, and I liked helping people.
And you had to be a deputy sheriff before GPS. And I imagine if you went out in some of those townships like Whiteford and Summerfield, and of course you probably knew Dundee pretty well, but Milan and London, I would imagine that it wasn't all that easy to find stuff every once in a while.
In all honesty, anything that was west of Telegraph, I knew pretty well.
Did you? Oh.
It was anything east of Telegraph that I didn't know so well because I was a Dundee boy.
Oh, that's right. Well, then you get into Woodland Beach, Detroit Beach, all those places around there. And all those streets are very, very similar.
That is true.
So what the police work that you did? You were on a road patrol when I first met you. You were just becoming a sergeant.
That would have been 1976, yeah.
Okay. What was the biggest difference between being a road deputy and a sergeant, which made you a shift commander?
Well, in my case, the deputy, you're out taking calls. You're shagging calls, any type of call that occurs on the road when the citizen calls in or to go check out a suspicious incident, up to, shooting or whatever. When you're in command, now you're overseeing the officers that are going on the road, but you're still going on. In my case, going on the road, I was promoted to a detective sergeant. Mm-hmm. So I worked with a surveillance team out of Detroit for 7 months. It was called a Mint team. Oh. And I worked that before actually getting into the burglary unit and then detective sergeant work.
I remember, too, about that time in the mid-'70s, burglary was a really big problem around here.
Yeah, and at that time, that's why we ended up with a burglary prevention grant. And we were running a crew of 4 officers plus a sergeant. And then Ed Burns gave out programs.
Oh, yeah, he was like the education kind of guy.
Right, the education type guy on burglary, on what to do, send him to school, different locks, how to protect yourself.
Crime prevention kind of stuff.
Crime, yeah. Correct.
How long in the detective bureau were you?
I was in the detective bureau until '80, I think. I think it was 80, I got promoted to lieutenant, and then I was in charge of the traffic and safety unit.
What's the biggest, as a detective, what's the biggest case you can remember, say, cracking that people would recognize, people would remember?
I don't know if there's anybody left around that would remember. So
I'm still here. I wrote about them.
I was involved in several cases. I was involved in a Lanker-Lesage murder. Fortunately, that didn't come to pass the way we had hoped as far as the conviction. But, we solved the case. And there was other cases that I was involved in with arsons, shootings, bank robbery, armed robbery.
I remember bank robberies were, almost one a month that one year. It was...
Yeah, it was pretty wild around here for a while on the bank robberies. We had a couple of units working the banks. So.
And they always seemed to hit Fridays around 2 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah. I guess it was Miller time.
It was after they got done at work. Jim Heisler, retired major from the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, is our guest today. What have you been doing since 2005?
Since 2005, well, when I was retiring, Sheriff Crutchfield told me that the department finally got a helicopter that I hadn't seen in 32 years. He told me that, I think it was in January of 2004, so made arrangements to get it picked up out of Alabama and flown up here. And after I retired, I flew that with Joe Shoemaker and a couple other officers, and did that until they got rid of that for drones. Mm-hmm. But in my other time, Sue and I take care of a couple grandkids in the county, and I work on the kids' house, and we have 9 grandkids altogether. So
that we'll talk about that in just a moment. We got to take a break now, but being a grandparent is a reward for something we did early on in our lives that we just don't realize what it was.
That's true.
Jim Heisler, retired Monroe County Sheriff Major, is with us here today, and we'll be right back after we hear these words from Jones for Men. Jones for Men, Monroe's premier men's clothing store in downtown Monroe since 1993, has a summer clearance sale that you don't want to miss. When you shop Jones for Men, you'll enjoy the warm, friendly atmosphere. Plus, you'll save 25 to 50% off on all great looks of summer, including long-sleeve sports shirts, polos, and shoes. Jones for Men also offers custom tailoring at no extra charge. Don't forget, fall weddings are right around the corner, and Jones for Men is the formal wear headquarters. Shop Jones for Men today at 10 East Front Street in beautiful downtown Monroe. Jones for Men, Monroe's premier men's clothing store. We're back now. Jim Heisler is our guest, and in the break we were, as 2 grandparents here, we were chatting about grandkids, and he's got 9 grandkids, as he mentioned just before the break. But you were saying something during the break too. It's interesting. Your grandkids, because of their parents' jobs and assignments, really pretty much were born all over the place.
Well, that's true. Our oldest daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Mike, they live up in Farmington Hills area.
So those kids are close.
Those kids were close. That was Annika, JT, and Greta. And then our middle daughter, Hallie, she's married to Jason McCarty, and they had 4 boys, Connor.
Oh, hey, Grandpa, I do that all the time.
Connor, Brady, Aiden, and Declan. Forgive me on that one. And he flew for the Air Force. So they left when they got married, and we never seen them again until back in Michigan as far as living here. Mm-hmm. Last year they moved back into the Fenton area.
Okay.
And now he flies for United. And then,
Fenton's not that far. What, hour and a
half,
no,
maybe? We get up there. We've been up to some soccer games and some baseball games and football games, and we've been to swimming for the oldest grandkids that are now in college and out of college, and then we have 2 grandkids with Molly and Jacob down here in Monroe. Molly, she's a respiratory therapist, and Jake works for a company for the Big 3, so we watch the 2 little ones.
And that keeps you young.
Oh, yeah.
It keeps you can't get old if you're watching two little ones.
One's 7 and the other's 13, Bailey and Penelope. Yeah, they keep us busy.
Well, one nice thing, too, about being a grandparent with a 7 and a 13-year-old that are nearby, you know everything about social media.
Yeah, especially the 13-year-old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, Jim, let's go back to your police career, too. What was, say, the toughest thing you ever had to do as a law enforcement officer?
Oh, I think that's easy for any police officers when you have to give a death notification. That's the toughest.
How do you prepare yourself for that?
You can't. You just have to know two circumstances are the same. Yeah, I mean, you have to play it by ear when you get to the door, and then go from there.
We've been hearing the last couple of years about different movements across the country to defund the police. Do you ever think in your life you would hear people say, let's not give money to cops?
No. If anything, they should be giving them more money, funding the police officers. I don't understand the concept of what they're coming up with a defund.
And when you were on the road, there were times there weren't many road deputies now, but I think, what do they guarantee now? 8 to 10 sworn officers on the road at all times. Is that pretty much what they've gotten to?
I'm not sure.
Not just the sheriff, but I mean with
yeah, I'm not
and
sure
federal.
of the numbers now as far as a guarantee, but I know there's probably 4 or 5 times more than when I worked the road. Back when I worked the road on the night shift, you had 1 car west of Telegraph, 1 car north of the river, 1 car south of the river, and most of the time 1 state car working the county.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there'd be 2 state cars, but mostly 1.
And that was
And then you had-
wild west back then,
Yeah,
too.
and then you had your City of Monroe and Carlton PD.
And now, they got Dundee PD now. They got Luna Pier. The smaller, some of the towns have coverage, but I don't even know when they clock in for the night. I would bet Dundee and Luna Pier, Carlton, probably not on all night.
I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I live in Carlton. I think it's pretty boring after 10. Once I was policing it all night long. Oh, now they're going to kick me off the committee.
Well, one thing about it, if you're bored as a police officer, that's a good night.
Yeah.
Because
You know who told me
there's
that
no
the
crime,
first time?
no activity.
You know who told me that? Craig Reeves told me that. Remember Craig Reeves?
Oh,
Used to
yes,
be
I
a
did, yeah.
lieutenant with the city.
Yep,
He said, Bob, he says, I wake up in the morning and pray for a quiet night.
yep.
He says, bore me all you can. Jim, in your career, 33 years, you ended up serving under 4 sheriffs, and you were the command officer of a future sheriff. You were with Bud Harrington, with Walt Trowbridge, with Carl Van Wert, with Tillman Crutchfield, and then Dale Malone served under you. All those guys were vastly different personalities, but what is the thing that they all kind of had in common?
I think the one thing they had in common is they wanted to make sure Monroe County was taken care of, that it was policed and people were safe.
And you probably served, the longest under Bud? Was that?
Yeah, that would be a true statement.
Because he was
Yeah.
a sheriff for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Now, did you go through? I've had other former deputies here. I've had Mike Davison, and I've had Tommy Redmond, and others who have talked about the first thing they remember is talking to the sheriff and talking to Quillen, and then they got hired. Is that the way it went with you?
No, actually, was sent over to the sheriff's office from the unemployment office when I found out they were the ones who told me that a helicopter pilot was wanted there.
Gotcha.
And when I got there, I was interviewed by, there was Spank Rod, Captain Bob Teagues, and Sheriff Harrington.
Okay.
And it was basically, I think, because they wanted to run me right into doing some narcotics work because I still had, longer hair and mustache, that kind of stuff. And
Well, that was the path for a lot of guys.
yeah,
Before anybody knew that they were, I know the city did that too. City of Monroe did that. Sam Kotcher brought some of the guys in when he was, doing drug work too for the city. So that seemed to be, at that time, that was kind of like the modus operandi. Ever have a time in your career when you said, I wish I would have done something else?
yeah, a couple of times, but
But
those are, everybody has a bad day or a week, and you just say, why didn't I stay in the service flying, or, why didn't I take that job flying out west? But overall, if I'd have done that, then I wouldn't have met my wife of 49 years, Sue.
there you go. 49 years. When's 50 coming up? What's the date?
May 26th next year.
Oh. So, that's a good husband that can say it that quick. Some of them have to think. Jim Heisler, so glad to see you again. You look in great health, and it's really great to see you. I remember all those years when I covered the sheriff's department. It's hard to believe it's almost 40 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I had a mustache, I needed glasses, and I had dark hair.
We
all had dark hair.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you invited me. It was fun.
Jim, good to see you again.
You too.
And folks, we'd like to thank you too for joining us today for Bobbing Around Monroe, a service of Monroe County Radio sponsored by Jones for Men in downtown Monroe. Now, we'll be back next week, and we'll be joined by another interesting guest when once again we go Bobbing Around Monroe.
Bobbing Around Monroe with host Bobb Vergiels is a public affairs feature of Monroe County Radio and is sponsored by Jones for Men in the heart of downtown Monroe and Infinity Spa and Salon, located at 6000 North Monroe Street at the corner of Netto Road. You can listen every Sunday at 12:30 p.m. and Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. for another edition